You can Corla. Taoiseach, 63 days ago I said to you that budget 2022 must be different. I pointed out that we had a once-in-a-generation opportunity to restructure our economy. Sadly, that didn't happen, and budget 2022 was just a little bit for everyone. And the families who are just over the income thresholds for various state supports have again been forgotten. These are the hard-working families, the so-called squeeze middle, who pay for everything, have remained invisible when it comes to state supports because they're just a few euro, sometimes as little as €1 over some arbitrary income threshold. Take childcare as an example, one of the challenges that are being faced by many of these families today. An average family spends 12% of their disposable income on the care of a 3-year-old child. That, of course, is if they're lucky enough to be able to secure a place. And while budget 2022 childcare changes are welcome, according to the SRI, these will see an average disposable income gain of 0.02% for families. However, lower middle income families will actually lose part of their subsidy due to the freezing of the childcare income thresholds for 2022. And at the other end of the age spectrum, the story isn't much better. Take Stephen, whose father is a school caretaker, whose mother is a school cleaner. And because Stephen earned an extra €1,000 from his part-time job just to be able to afford to go to college, he ended up €2,500 down by going over the SUSI income threshold. And budget 2022 increased the SUSI grant thresholds for the first time in a decade, but it will do little to alter the trend that we've seen over the last 6 years, which shows that while student numbers have risen by more than 17%, the number of students in receipt of the SUSI grant has actually fallen by 6%. And I'm afraid that the €200 increase to the grant next year will just about belatedly cover the increasing costs of energy and little else. Taoiseach, the point I'm making here is that the invisible middle, the people who get up early in the morning, and the people who keep the doors of our businesses and our services open because they do that extra hour of overtime, paying their taxes every week, every fortnight, or every month, by the end of December, find themselves worse off for working hard, just like Stephen. And that's why, Taoiseach, I believe the government must restructure our whole economy.
Thank you, Deputy Naughten. Taoiseach.
First of all, I think there is a need, as we emerge from COVID, to restructure the economy. That's why in the Economic Recovery Plan and the National Development Plan, there's such a strong focus on, first of all, the digitalisation and the digital transformation that is occurring and will occur here and globally, and also in terms of the green economy, in terms of the significant investments now allocated to public transport, for example, in terms of retrofitting and the jobs that will be created in that sector, and a range of other sectors that relate to the green economy, where thousands of jobs wait to be developed, in terms of offshore wind, for example, in terms of the development of ports in various areas. So that's how I look at the restructuring of the economy. I do take your point in respect of the necessity to improve income thresholds and increase them in a number of categories. One would be local authority housing, for example, but that has to be done along with other reforms, and there is a review underway at the moment, along with other interlocking issues to do with housing more generally. For the first time in a long time this year, the government decided, and this government did, in terms of the SUSI grant being extended and the income thresholds being improved and the adjacent rate being improved as well and increased, which will help thousands of students. Now, I would like to go further in respect of that. In healthcare, the budget, we took a number of steps in terms of the drug payment scheme, in terms of the threshold there, in reducing that, and making that more favourable to hard-pressed families in terms of prescription charges. And that whole part of universal healthcare, in terms of extending your free GP access to children, for example, there was a significant move on that in the budget. We would like to do more in the next budget. So in the areas of health, in particular, higher education and education more generally, we want to do more. There was a tax package of about 520 million, which I think, is of value. It's not enormous. I'm not going to pretend it is, but at least it's an additional contribution to people's take-home income. The biggest challenge we've had, I think, this autumn has been the global rise in inflation, much of it caused through the energy prices and the issue around gas globally and the supply of energy, and also supply chain interruptions and difficulties arising from COVID. We've managed to weather to some extent the COVID supply chain issues so far, although we're not immune from them by any means, because we are part of a global system. On the energy front, I think that is concerning, and through the fuel allowance and through other measures we sought to try and help people to deal with what have been exceptional increases, not just in Ireland, but across Europe and across the world in terms of inflation. And inflation is the big issue of the day right now. The European Central Bank is saying that they believe that's a temporary phenomenon, and there's different academic perspectives on that, and economists have a view on that, but the majority still are of the view that that will bottom out certainly towards the early part of next year.
Taoiseach, I'm glad you mentioned the issue of energy, because this winter increased electricity and heating costs will hit every single family hard. And working families will not only have to meet their own additional costs, they're also paying for the increases to the fuel allowance scheme. Yet the value of the retrofitting grants has gone down from 1/3 to just over 1/4 due to the rising cost of materials. And there is a real concern that the value of the grant will continue to be diminished. But for the invisible middle, grants for these families are of little use when they don't have the 18,000 to 20,000 euro to put with the grant to reduce their heating bills, to improve their health, to increase the comfort of their homes, and to help our climate. Taoiseach, over the next decade, the government is asking these families to pay an extra 100,000 euro to deliver on its climate action plan, and yet they are being pushed further and further away from the financial supports that are needed to actually make this happen.
Thank you, Deputy Naughten. Taoiseach.
Well, I just said in my initial reply, I did deal with the childcare issue, but we are, as you know, making very substantial funding available in the budget, and we'll do so next year in terms of making sure we can get proper income supports for workers within the childcare sector and create a career pathway, with the employers and the unions now working with it and knowing that there's a financial envelope there to deal with the deliberations of a JLC in respect of childcare. And in terms of the retrofitting and the grant, as you have said, we have provided additional funding for retrofitting across the board in the budget, and indeed in the recovery and resilience plan also, and that we submitted to Europe, and more generally within the NDP and the economic recovery plan. And of course, within that financial envelope, we will do what we have to do to make sure that we can incentivise more people to engage in retrofitting. And I do accept that there's a gap to be bridged between affordability and what people can spend.
Thank you, Taoiseach.
And we don't want to be people going through too much excessive debt at high rates. So there may be opportunities for low interest loans as well as additional grants for people. That's been worked on.
Deputy Jones.